Hey, welcome back, folks. Great to see you on this Saturday, and all eyes are on what's shaping up to be a very active time period with multiple winter storms, one in the Northeast and another record-breaking winter storm shaping up for portions of the Deep South by early next week. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name's Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and if you haven't already, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications so you're up to date with this model guidance and a breakdown of that guidance as we continue pushing ahead through what has been a very active January 2025. And a little spoiler alert, looking a little bit further on down the road, signs are it could stay active as we end out the month. So you'll definitely want to stay up to date. All right, folks. So let's go ahead and break it all down. Let me give you the latest model guidance and make sure that you're prepared for everything on the horizon. Now, what you see looping next to me, this is the latest run of our European computer model. Just came out this morning and continuing to show that double threat potential, one threat in the Northeast and another threat deep south along even portions of the Gulf Coast and into the Southeast, areas of the Carolinas, Georgia, and maybe even portions of the Northeast need to be on lookout for this second storm. I'll show you the model guidance on that here in just a moment. Now, before we get there, let's go ahead and take a look at satellite imagery because I think it's telling a very important picture this morning that is going to kind of shape up the overall theme of today's video. Now, right now you're looking at this and you're thinking, all right, there's a whole bunch of a mess in the east, and yes, that is important, and we'll talk about that, and you can see it quite well. All of this is some nice rain and snow beginning to fall, but what I really want you to point your eyes to is what's happening out this way. You see kind of this stagnant blue, and you're probably thinking, all right, well, what kind of clouds are those? Well, those aren't clouds. That is an air mass. The air is so cold up into Canada and now down into portions of the lower 48 that it's showing up as cloud cover on our satellite. In fact, look at these greens up into Canada. Normally, you would think those are clouds, but that's just how cold the air is, that it is the same temperature as the tops of some clouds that we sometimes see in the atmosphere. So this is an Arctic shot of air that is working south, and that is what is going to set the stage for such a rare event by early next week and also help to reinforce that snow potential in the Northeast this weekend. And then again, we'll watch later next week. That air could still be hanging around and more storminess could be rotating around it. So just a very active time frame to watch, easily the most active winter storm kind of pattern we've seen since at least 2022 through the Deep South. All right, let's go ahead and also take a look at radar imagery because, like I said, we do have some showers and storminess ongoing. Really all of it out into the east right now. You can see heavy rain in the south from Atlanta down into Montgomery, even back towards Macon, Georgia, working towards the Carolinas, and some lighter rain up into sections of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and down into Kentucky, and some snow mixing in there as well. Now, definitely let me know in the comments. Let me know what you're seeing out there, and also kind of let me know where you're watching from. That'll help me kind of gauge things, but definitely seeing some of that green and that blue on radar this morning into much of the eastern half of the country. But this is not really the main show. This is kind of a little appetizer before our actual storm system gets cranking up into the Northeast by Sunday afternoon. All right, here are our current alerts out there, and the map is beginning to fill in. I know it doesn't look very exciting right now, but some very interesting new developments, since overnight last night. Now, winter storm watches remain in effect from coastal Maine all the way down through western Massachusetts into northern New Jersey, the Hudson River Valley of New York State there, just north of New York City, just about the entire state of Connecticut outside of the beaches, and then even back down into Pennsylvania, including Scranton, not quite including Philadelphia, but just to the west and north of the city under that winter storm watch, and winter storm warnings now in effect in these pink colors through much of western Maryland, the mountains of West Virginia and northern Virginia there in that as well, and newly issued winter weather advisories from eastern Kentucky into other sections of the mountains of southwest Virginia and much of the state of West Virginia as a whole in those winter weather advisories. Now, all of this is for what's coming tomorrow. Another thing you'll notice on the map, though, is check this out down into Louisiana. Folks, the state of Louisiana all the way down to the Gulf Coast, including the city of New Orleans and even the coastal sections of Mississippi, now under a winter storm watch for the potential of a big-time record-breaking storm by Tuesday afternoon. So this is not a drill anymore. This is not just some crazy model guidance. We officially have watches and warnings on the map. It's just not very often you see something like this. And that's what makes this such a special event. in maybe a good way for snow lovers, but also a bad way from an infrastructure side of things. This air is going to be very cold, and as you can imagine, these parishes down here in the swamps are not quite equipped for snow removal. So it'll definitely be something that is going to be very impactful for sure for a lot of folks. All right, now before I start showing you crazy model runs with snow and ice and everything else that there could possibly be, let's talk about the first step for that process, and that's cold air. We need that before we get anything frozen to fall from the sky. So this is this afternoon's departure from normal in the temperature department. Any orange or red you see, those are above average temperatures, and then that blue and purplish colors you see, those are below average temperatures, and you can see it's working our way. This is, again, this afternoon. Most of us back into the plains and the Rockies now in that cold air mass, still holding on to a little bit of warmth with some of that scattered rain this afternoon into the east. But as we go into overnight tonight and we're waking up, this is Sunday morning, you can see that cold air mass moving even further east and further south. Now, still a little pocket of some nicer air into the mid-southeast from the Carolinas down through Georgia and Florida, and some warmer air left into New England. But I assure you, by Sunday afternoon and evening, that will quickly fade. And here we go, waking up Monday morning. Everyone now in the freezer, from California to Maine down to Florida and Texas. Everyone in below average temperatures as that big Arctic air mass settles in. And here's a little spoiler alert, folks. Through next week, just keep on watching the map. This is all the way to Wednesday and Thursday and into Friday, and then into finally next weekend, maybe we get a little bit of warm up, but this is going to be long lasting cold. Some folks are not going to crack 32 degrees for at least 4 or 5 days into parts of the country. So trust me, it's going to be cold. It's going to be long lasting cold. So you're going to want to do any sort of preparations that you normally would for these Arctic outbreaks that we sometimes get, because this is definitely going to be one of them. And other folks are going to have to prepare for that and snowfall. So it really is going to be quite the interesting week ahead for many folks, and just very impactful across the board. All right, let's take a look now at some models here. This is our latest NAM model for the weekend potential winter storm in the Northeast. And I say potential, it will be a winter storm. Like I said, we already have those watches in effect, likely to be upgraded to warnings for at least some folks by tomorrow, or really by this evening as the storm's working in tomorrow. All right, this is later this morning, and kind of see more of the same happening. That light precipitation working east, some snow in blue, some rain in green there. And this is just, again, kind of the appetizer. Now, I do think we'll get some snow in the interior Northeast out of this, from the Finger Lakes up to the Adirondacks. Potentially seeing a little bit of snow up into the Green Mountains. Also seeing some of that snow, but like I said, just kind of a precursor event. And rain will continue in the southeast as well here through the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida. But it's right about here that we are going to need to kind of put our eyes back on the map. This is tomorrow morning, about 10 a.m. Eastern time, and you'll notice a big area of precipitation building back in where we have those winter weather advisories through Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia. This is the start of a storm system beginning to develop right here through the mid-Atlantic. So basically what's happening, meteorologically speaking, is we've got this big shot of Arctic air working in, and this is running into the Atlantic Ocean. And comparatively speaking, obviously the ocean is not super warm this time of year, but the Gulf Stream right in here definitely still quite warm, and you get this clash of air masses between kind of warm air right here and super cold air over the continent. That creates a boundary, as we call it in meteorology, or a baroclinic zone. And basically that's just an area that low pressure wants to form. That combined with some sort of lift over it, it makes low pressure, it begins to spin, and this one will spin up pretty quickly due to that strong temperature difference at the surface. And that's why you see on the map here, it goes from basically nothing to something pretty quick here by tomorrow morning and afternoon. And we could see pretty good snowfall totals into Kentucky, Tennessee, portions of West Virginia, probably 1 to 3 inches in those areas, higher portions in the mountains. And then we'll go ahead and pause it here Sunday morning. And let's zoom on in for our folks in the Northeast. I know I've got plenty of you watching up here. Let's talk about the potential with this winter storm. All right, this is tomorrow afternoon, right around 3 o'clock. Snow beginning to fall, at least on this model, in D.C., Baltimore, really much of Western Virginia as a whole, and just about the entire state of Maryland and Delaware. Now, the question is, and it always is this with these storms, is that rain-snow line. Where does it set up? I don't think we're going to have any icing concerns with this one, but is the rain-snow line kind of where the model says it will be right now, or does it go a little bit further inland? That will be the question that obviously will need to be answered, and I think we will answer it a little bit better here once we look at the snowfall total map after I show you this model. We'll keep on moving ahead. By tomorrow evening, this is about 5 p.m., we've got heavy snow in Philadelphia during the Eagles game. Eagles-Rams there at the Link at 3 p.m. It's looking like a snow game, folks. So it's been a while since we've had a snow game in Philly. This one I definitely think will be one by tomorrow afternoon. You can see that snow falling. We've got snow falling up through New York into really much of New Jersey. Now the question again will be, does southern New Jersey also get in on the fun, or is this more of a northern New Jersey event? That's up for interpretation, and we'll see what happens. But either way, I think at least northern New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York City going to get some snow out of this event tomorrow afternoon. And then we get into the evening, and folks, this one's moving quick, but it is a feisty storm. So it might only snow for maybe 6-12 hours at the most. But it's coming down good. This is a heavy band of snow. We've got a lot of lift going on here, and these are heavy snowfall rates and very good ratios as well. What I mean by that is this is going to probably be a pretty fine powdery snow for most folks. Now, the closer you get to that rain snow line, the more wet the flakes will be, but you get a little bit further inland, this could have ratios of 1 to 15 or so, meaning for every inch of what would be rain could be 15 inches of snow. And that's why, even though there's not going to be a lot of that precipitation and it's a quick hitting event, we're still going to get some pretty good totals. I think someone going to crack a foot in the Northeast out of this. So this is Sunday evening. Keep on going ahead. The storm continues. It pulls up the coast, and by this is 11 p.m. we're already done in Philly, New York, Baltimore, or Philly, Baltimore, D.C. rather, tapering down in New York City as well, continuing to crank up into Boston and up into the down east areas of Maine during the overnight. And then we're waking up Monday morning and clearing out. But then there comes that lake effect machine once again, working in as that just brutal Arctic air runs over those Great Lakes and produces some heavy snow there, probably from Erie, and then into the Finger Lakes. We could get some lake effect over those, and also probably down through the Tug Hill as well. So definitely a snowy looking map. This is the latest brand new from the National Weather Service, their forecast for this storm system. And you see that swath of heaviest snow just inland from the I-95. So still getting snow on I-95, going for about 2 inches in D.C., about 2 to 3 inches in Baltimore, about 3 to 5 in Philly, 3 to 5 in New York City, and then it's going for about 2 to 4 into Boston, probably a little more than that. The model kind of ends here at 1 a.m. Monday, or the forecast, I should say. So if it's still snowing after 1 a.m., more snow will add up here into Maine than what you're seeing on this map specifically. But it's in range definitely for kind of points New York City southbound. A little bit inland, though, up towards Scranton, northern New Jersey, into western Mass, western Connecticut. We've got areas about half a foot to 8 inches or so. I think that's definitely going to happen. I think somebody in here might sneak out a foot of snow from this one. It might not be in a big city, but I think someone in here, maybe these higher terrains, these higher hills of northern New Jersey and through the Hudson Valley, could see that foot mark very possible out of this winter storm. So that's the forecast from the National Weather Service. I also wanted to share with you a couple of model runs just to show you, still some interpretation on what could happen with this storm system. Now, what you're looking at here, you're thinking, all right, well, this is basically what you just showed me. This is the European model, the NWS going pretty heavily with this forecast. And I think it's a good one. I think this is probably the most likely scenario. But let's also take a look at some other models. What about the GFS model? GFS a little bit further south and east and even heavier totals. Now, are we going to get a foot of snow in Boston? It's going to be tough to do. I think that's unlikely. But I do think the GFS shows that potential of isolated places in here getting up near a foot. Very heavy snow back down into the mountains of West Virginia. That's something to watch as well out of this setup, and definitely higher totals on the GFS and a little bit closer to I-95. What about the Icon model? Higher totals, but a little bit further inland from I-95. This is also, I think, a very realistic map. I'll show you, let's find one more model about the Canadian. The Canadian goes all out and doesn't really show much of anything for the I-95, but has a huge storm into the interior. I think that's probably wrong, but I would go between either the European here as the most likely scenario. I'd say the GFS is the boom scenario. That's kind of the higher end chances. And then let's see if we can find a lower end scenario in here. We'll say the UK Met maybe is the lower end scenario, at least in terms of totals, but even the UK Met's a little bit closer to the coast here, and you can see that with those higher totals into southern New Jersey, into Long Island, and just for much of the I-95 as a whole. So definitely going to be interesting to see how that one unfolds. I'll go ahead and throw this in here as well. I'll be live tonight at about 7, and I will have a guest speaker with me, BGWX from Twitter. If you follow him, he's big in the Northeast, and he's great at breaking down these storms, so he'll help me kind of discuss this one for my folks in the Northeast, and he'll probably know local communities and all a lot more than me. So definitely come by with your questions at 7 when we do the live stream on that. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the South now. Before we get exactly there, let's talk about this cold air a little bit more because I told you it's going to get cold, but how cold is it really going to get? I think that's a very important question you're probably going to want to answer to, and I think I've got it for you here. So this is Monday afternoon high temperatures. Through the lower 48, and you get the idea, folks. Brutal cold. We're not going to crack 0 degrees into Minnesota and much of the Dakotas Monday afternoon. We're only in the single digits in the teens through the Ohio Valley, only in the teens and 20s through the Tennessee Valley, Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, Little Rock, potentially up into Raleigh. All those cities might not even hit freezing Monday afternoon. So you get the idea. It's going to be brutally cold Monday night. This is about when our winter storm is supposed to be cranking up, and you wonder why it's going to be so far south and we're going to have snow and ice so far south. Well, here's why. We've got lows in the 20s along the Gulf Coast through Louisiana, Texas, heck, even the Florida Panhandle, places like Destin, Pensacola, Tallahassee, all of these major cities going to be below that freezing mark by the time we're waking up Tuesday morning. And you go north of there, folks, we're 15, 20 degrees below 0. That's not even the wind chill. That's just the raw temperature out there up into the northern Midwest. So you get the idea. Brutal cold on the way. That combined with this storm energy that I'm going to show you now, that's a recipe for some record snow, at least how far south it's going to get, and potentially even record totals for those areas as far south as this storm is going to be. All right, so I've been talking about this a lot, the setup for this storm. Like I said, we got the cold air. That's problem number 1 solved. Problem number 2 is we need some sort of energy or lift or some sort of mechanism to fire off precipitation over that cold air. And this is what's going to do it, folks. You see all this energy on the map, but it's really this piece right into here. We've got what we call a trough in meteorology. And if you're new to the channel, I'll go ahead and quickly explain it to you. Basically, this is an elongation of lower heights or colder air. And I know you can't really see it on this map. You're thinking, all right, well, that's cool. That's great. But basically, just go ahead and look at how these little lines here are kind of bending back this way. That is a trough. We have these lower numbers. You see 507, and then you get higher numbers about 549 here. So that's that extension of these lower height values in one direction. And that is very commonly how we get storms to form, is on the divergent side of these troughs. And if you don't know what that means, basically it's just the right-hand side. So if this is the line I drew, the center of the trough, pretend that, it's vertically stacked or whatever. On this side, that is where our lift is going to be. Now, this trough is going to move. It's going to swing down towards the Gulf Coast, and all of that lift is going to move with it right over the Gulf areas and into the deep south and into the southeast and even potentially portions of the mid-Atlantic and northeast by the time we move this ahead. So this is the Euro model, and just to show you, I'm feeling pretty confident in this storm. That's the Euro. This is the Canadian. This is the GFS. Let's see if we can find another model in here. This is the UK Met model. You get the idea. All of them have this extension of energy and have this kind of firing mechanism for a storm off in the same area. So that's a good sign. Now, what there are still some question marks on, and I think less questions than there have been, I'm feeling, again, pretty confident that this storm's going to happen. I'm also gaining confidence it's going to be a more amplified storm than some of the models show, basically meaning it's going to be a stronger storm than maybe some of these other weaker models show, and I'll show you why that is. This is the European model, same map I just showed you, but let's loop it ahead into time here. This is into Monday evening, and let's stop it right here Tuesday morning. Here's that piece of energy, and what's happening is it's continuing to dig. Now, this is in a positive tilt. And generally speaking, that's not very favorable for a storm system to form off of it. However, this storm is kind of going to luck out a little bit. Even though it's not super negatively tilted, you see all of these other little pieces of energy getting out ahead of the storm. This tells me lift is beginning. And you might be wondering, well, why are we getting lift? Well, we are on the divergent side here. So granted, it's not negatively tilted. I talk about that a lot. If it was negatively tilted, this would be a massive storm. But what's happening is the same thing I talked about earlier when I talked about a baroclinic zone along the East Coast. We're going to have an even stronger one along the Gulf of Mexico. I want you to think about how warm the ocean temperatures are out here. If I could draw a W, that would help us. Think about how warm the ocean temperatures are, and then think about how cold the air temperatures are that I just showed you. Folks, that is a feisty boundary between temperatures, and it's not going to take much lift over that to get a storm to begin to form here. And that's what the European shows. You see all this energy out ahead of it. That tells me the storm's getting going. It's cranking up, and then it continues to kind of move eastbound here through the southeast. And then the storm tries to turn negative right as it gets to the northeast. That'll be another big question we need to watch. If that happens, we could get a storm to ride all the way up the coast, and we could get slammed with snow from Texas up through the Northeast. Now that's kind of still out there a little bit. We'll see if that happens. We're feeling more confident about the deep south and the Northeast with this storm, as ironic as that is to say. But we'll definitely watch it. Now that's one model. That's kind of the European that shows a bigger storm. Let me show you another model. This is the Icon model, shows not so big of a storm. And here's kind of the progression of it. Let me refresh the page here so it loads properly. All right, so here we go. Same piece of energy back out here into the desert Southwest, but what do you notice a little bit different here? Well, you just get less of that lift out ahead of it. The setup is pretty similar. We just don't have nearly as much lift out here. And I think the Icon is kind of out to lunch a little bit, but I wanted to show it to you because it's a different solution. And I'm not going to hide different models from you, but I'll tell you, I think the European is closer to reality because of that very strong baroclinic zone I told you about. Again, very warm versus very cold temperatures down here. It's just not very often we get an area of instability that high, and it's not going to take much lift over that for a storm to get going. So that's the upper levels. That's all the fun, meteorology nerdy stuff. Let's get to the stuff you want to see. Let's show you those maps that show that snow and that rain and that potential ice as well. All right, so we're going to start with the two models I just showed you. We're going to do the European and then the Icon. Then we'll look at some other models, and then we'll take a look at some ensembles, and I'll give you a very quick sneak peek on potential snowfall. We're still a little early for a deep dive map, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So here we go. This is the European model for this storm system, and the time right above my head in Eastern time. So if you live in the central states, subtract an hour. Here we go, though. Tuesday morning, snow beginning to develop back into Louisiana, Texas, into southern Mississippi. By Tuesday afternoon, I mean, folks, it could be puking snow, and I know I love saying that. Some of you laugh at me, but it really could be puking snow on the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, including places like New Orleans. As crazy as that is to say, it's very possible. Same thing down here to Pascagoula, Mobile. Check this out, the Florida Panhandle getting pummeled with snow. And then by Tuesday evening, folks, the Carolinas getting in on the action. Now, here is going to be a big question mark. And I'll kind of draw an area in here that I think is going to be a tough forecast right into here. Do we get enough of this snow shield to move inland for snow in areas like Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, Greensboro, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, especially the northern suburbs of Atlanta and Birmingham, then up even into kind of Blacksburg area? Do we get this shield of snow to work inland enough? That's a big question mark. And I'll tell you, generally speaking, this uptrends for areas like this with a setup like this. So we'll see if that happens. I will say the models have maybe trended a little bit better for you folks. I'm watching in Charlotte, and I want a big snowstorm, trust me. So I'm watching it like a hawk too and watching those trends. But where I think I'm most confident right now we're going to get big snow out of this is right into this area. I-95 corridor of North Carolina, I-20 corridor of South Carolina, including Columbia. I know, don't faint if you're down there and you're a big snow fan. It's not often you hear it. And then back down here into this area right here. This is the corridor I'm most confident that we're going to get a big winter storm out of this, and you can see why all this snow working through. This is by Tuesday evening, and then this is when things get interesting, folks. The European cranks this storm up along the coast, and we've got a full-blown winter storm, puking snow, as I say, right along coastal sections of Georgia, all the way up into the Carolinas. And it would be an absolute record breaker. Now, we might not break total snowfall or total snowfall records for some of these areas, but I think daily records absolutely will be broken. And there will be records that are broken, trust me. I'll have to look in the books to find exactly which ones, but I can almost guarantee you somebody's going to break some sort of record with this storm with a look like that. And I think this is kind of becoming a more likely look, like the European shows. Again, big snow from Texas, Louisiana, all the way up into Georgia and the Carolinas. And my folks in the Northeast looking at this and seeing that little bit down here into the Delmarva and all, stay tuned. I'm going to talk about you in a second, so don't leave yet. All right, Icon model. This was the opposite of the European. This was the one I showed you in the upper levels that wasn't so excited, so let me show it to you. I think this is the floor with the storm. I think this would be the lowest kind of impact event, and even this one, it has impacts. You see that snow and ice beginning back into Texas, Louisiana. I think no matter what, this is about locked in at this point. We feel very confident this area from Houston, maybe just north of Houston, over through southern Louisiana, through the I-10 corridor into southern Mississippi. You're going to get snow probably Tuesday morning, overnight Monday, Tuesday afternoon, that time frame. And then the Icon a little bit weaker and just get some light snow into the Florida Panhandle, and then get some light snow into coastal areas of the Carolinas, and then gets on out of here. So that's kind of the floor with this storm. I think a worst case scenario is a 1 to 3 inch event, which would still be more than enough to cause big problems. I've got to reiterate that. You get 2 inches of snow in the swamps of Louisiana, I mean, no one's going to travel for a while, okay? Same thing with coastal South Carolina and North Carolina. It's not often the Outer Banks get snow at all. They've got, hurricane measures, not so much winter storm measures. So even if we get a light event like that, sure, cities like Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Atlanta, you won't really get much of anything besides brutal cold, but the coastline will still run into problems with a light winter weather event. Let's show you the GFS model. Same thing here. We'll kind of move it ahead. We've got that big snowstorm in southern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. A little bit more mixing down here. We've got some ice along the Gulf Coast. And then we've got that big winter storm from the eastern Carolinas all the way down through Columbia, South Carolina, Augusta, Macon, Warner Robins, into Montgomery, Talladega. I know, trust me, it's crazy for you to hear. It's crazy for me to say it. But cities like this in the snow on this map, and then the storm tries to crank up offshore, it's another big one. Final model I'll show you in the southeast. Good old Canadian. Now, this model has been absolutely just consistent as you can be for a model for the better part of 5 days or so. It has continued to show a major winter storm for more areas and an even stronger winter storm for the areas that were already going to get it. So here we go. Tuesday afternoon, this is the boom scenario. I showed you the icon. That's kind of the bust scenario. This is the boom scenario with this storm. Major snowstorm through all of Louisiana, just about much of Texas there, even some snow into southern Arkansas. Southern sections of Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana getting absolutely just blasted with heavy snow. Again, that puking snow, my favorite analogy there. And then it moves into sections of Georgia and the Carolinas. This would bring, I'll be honest with you folks, if this were to verify, somebody could see a foot of snow in the deep south. And trust me, I know that's crazy to hear. That's not the forecast. Not the forecast. I'll say it a third time, not the forecast. However, if we get the boom scenario, which again is only probably a 10 or 20% chance of happening, but then again, so is the icon. That's probably only about a 10 or 20% chance of happening, is that bust scenario. This boom scenario, though, this would bring nearly a foot of snow for someone in the deep south from Georgia through the Carolinas, maybe even back down. Again, the alligators could have a foot of snow on them in Louisiana if we got this boom scenario. So this is overnight Tuesday. You see that big snow into the Carolinas. Again, further inland. So Charlotte, Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, everyone in the state of South Carolina, North Carolina, and just about everyone in the state of Georgia outside of maybe down towards the Jacksonville area. Getting good snow out of this, and then just absolutely bombs out over the eastern half of North Carolina, and we just get an all-out major winter storm. All right, so that's crazy. What about my friends in the Northeast? I know you're interested too. You're thinking, all right, well, that looks like it's getting a little bit further north than maybe you showed me yesterday, and I would agree. Here is the same model, the European from earlier that I showed you, but let's zoom it out a little bit, and let's move it ahead into time. So here we go, and check it out. This is Wednesday early morning. Oh, so close for our friends in the Northeast. In fact, southern New Jersey, Long Island, the Cape Cod area, these very kind of beachy areas through the Delmarva northbound, through southern Massachusetts, seeing some snow out of this setup. And again, I'll tell you, if we kind of back it up a little bit, let's look at the trend here. I love doing this. Let's look at the European model. So this is a couple runs ago. A newer run, 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 and this is where we're at now. You see that shift north? It's not big, but it is small. So that tells me the models are getting a little bit more excited about prospects in the Northeast. And something else that tells me that is this next map I'm going to show you. Let's take a look at Ensemble, the chance of at least an inch of snow falling. You know I love this map. This is the European. Folks, it's about a guarantee. We're going to see at least an inch of snow in southern Louisiana, southern Texas there, southern Mississippi, Alabama, portions of the Florida Panhandle, about guaranteed all the way on that western bit down near Alabama, about guaranteed to get at least an inch of snow out of this one. From that kind of corridor, and then the coastal sections of South Carolina and North Carolina, also about guaranteed. Myrtle Beach running a 76% chance of at least an inch of snow falling. Same thing for the Outer Banks. And then look at the Northeast. This gets very close to you folks as well, through southern New Jersey, down into Long Island, into the Cape Cod area. It's very close, and the good news is this map. This is the trend. Again, I showed you the trend on the operational run. What about the trend in the ensembles? This is great news for a lot of folks in the Southeast and the Northeast if you're a snow lover. If you're not a snow lover, not so much, but here we go. This is a couple runs ago. Again, same map, by the way, so the keys at the bottom. This is a chance of at least an inch of snow falling. I'll just move it newer run, newer run, newer run, newer, 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 and then this one. This is the one from overnight. And notice that big uptick, even just from yesterday evening to overnight last night. See that big uptick? Even places like Charlotte now running a 50-60% chance of at least an inch of snow. Raleigh, I think this could be a big storm for Raleigh. A city I don't talk a lot about, but I wouldn't be surprised to get a pretty good snowstorm in Raleigh. Atlanta running good chances, and then those coastal areas really locking it in, and then getting pretty good up into the coastal sections of the Northeast. Now, one more map. Let me show you this because we have the brand new run of this now from this morning. I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of pull this up on the fly here. Let's see what the morning run shows. All right. Is it going to be like last night? Is the trend going to continue, or is it going to be a little bit lower than what last night showed? Well, here we go. Looks just about as good in Louisiana, Texas. And yeah, folks, that's just about as good as the previous run for a lot of folks. So yeah, it's definitely locking in on a big winter storm through the southeast. That I can guarantee you. I think we'll leave it there, folks. That's all I got for you on this Saturday morning. I'll be back tonight with a video, and then we will be live tonight on the channel at 7 p.m. Swing by, ask some questions. Let's talk about this thing and break it down for you. All right, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay warm, stay safe. I'll see you all next time.